Senator Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon to you and our colleagues and guests with us today in the Senate chamber. It's a big day in the state Senate, big day for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm rising to speak in enthusiastic support of the Massachusetts Plastic Reduction Act. The Commonwealth needs to take urgent and concerted action to reduce and eliminate single-use plastics. And today, I'm so pleased and grateful that the Senate is showing real leadership and taking action on this critical environmental and public health issue. I'll acknowledge the undeniable convenience and versatility of single-use plastics. But this convenience is far outweighed by the many, many harms that are caused by single-use plastics. It is a privilege to follow the senator from Needham, the chair of the Environment Committee, who has spent years working on the legislation before us today, consulting with all the different stakeholders, including her colleagues, in order to put this bill together. She, in her powerful remarks, made it clear the many serious harms that plastics are causing to our communities, to our environment, our public health. I want to just very quickly summarize again what those harms are. First of all, the fracking and the mining of oil and gas, which are used to produce plastic products, causes environmental damage. Second, the manufacturing and distribution of plastic products are a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Third, eating and drinking from plastic containers exposes people to toxic chemicals that leach from the plastic and causes us to ingest microplastics. Fourth, most single-use plastics, which of course are used and then discarded almost immediately, end up being buried in landfills, burned in incinerators, or discarded into the environment. About 900,000 tons of plastic waste were disposed of in Massachusetts in 2022. About half of that waste is burned in incinerators located in 5 Massachusetts communities: Rochester, Millbury, North Andover, Haverhill, and Saugus. The remainder is shipped to other states like Ohio, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Michigan, where it is burned in incinerators or buried there. Regardless of where this plastic waste is disposed of, landfills and incinerators are almost always located in environmental justice communities, which means that the environmental and health harms disproportionately impact low-income people and people of color. Some of that plastic waste ends up getting littered in our streets and in our parks. It then goes down our storm drains, ends up in streams and rivers, and eventually flows out into our oceans. Once there, it breaks down over decades into microplastics. And as Senator Roush pointed out, microplastics have been found in every single location on this planet. From the peaks of our highest mountains to the depths of our oceans, they have been found. They exist throughout the food chain because, of course, they are consumed by fish and other animals, move up the food chain, which we as humans then ingest. And so we have, all of us, have microplastics within our bodies. The amount continues to increase every day, and the more we understand and do more research, the more we see the health harms that come from all of this plastic in our food chains and in our bodies. And then finally, another harm, and I'm not sure if this was mentioned yet, is that plastic disposal places a significant and costly burden on our cities and towns, because whether that plastic is disposed of as garbage, or whether consumers are separating it out and putting it into recycling bins. Communities have to pay tipping fees and recycling fees. It used to be that at least on the recyclables, our municipalities might not have to pay anything, or they might actually make some money on the recyclables. That is no longer the case. As probably everybody's aware, a number of years ago, China announced that they would stop accepting all of this plastic from the United States. So much of it was being, that we thought we were recycling was actually being shipped over there. That has largely stopped. So it is actually very costly for our municipalities to actually dispose of all of that plastic. And in 2019, plastic waste made up 16% of all municipal solid waste. So it is a significant component of the solid waste that our municipalities are responsible for disposing of. Despite these many critical harms to our environment, to human health, and to municipal budgets, the production and use of plastic continues to grow every single year. In 1950, the United States produced 2.3 million tons of plastic annually. By 2015, that had skyrocketed to 448 million tons. So from 2.3 million tons a number of decades ago to almost 500 million tons. Single-use plastics account for approximately 40% of all these plastics produced. So again, of that close to 500 million tons, about 40% are single-use, which again means consumers use them, and then almost immediately, within minutes or hours, those are discarded. Enormously, enormously wasteful. It is projected that if we continue on our current path, the amount of annual plastic production will double by 2050, so reaching 1 billion tons. It is also projected that by 2050, there will be more plastic in our oceans than fish. The so-called Great Pacific Garbage Patch, much of which consists of plastic debris, covers an area today twice the size of Texas. That's right. There's an area in the North Pacific Ocean where, due to the flow of the currents, a lot of this trash that ends up in our oceans gathers, and that is already twice the size of Texas, much of which is plastic, and it continues to grow every day, every year. Now, many consumers have been led to believe that the solution to plastic waste is recycling. But this is a myth that has been perpetuated by the plastics industry and others who profit from the sale of products in plastic containers. The reality is that less than 10% of post-consumer plastic waste in the United States is actually recycled. Less than 10% of that plastic that we all think is being recycled, this includes all that plastic that we throw into recycling bins, less than 10% is actually recycled. The real solution is that we must urgently reduce and eliminate our use of single-use plastics. And the good news is that viable, reasonable, and cost-effective alternatives exist today for many single-use plastic products. A great example of this, of course, is single-use plastic shopping bags. The best alternative, as we all know, is cloth reusable bags, which many shoppers have already been using for years and years. Another alternative is paper bags, which are still better, at least for the environment, than plastic bags. As of May 2023, 156 cities and towns in the Commonwealth had already passed local ordinances to eliminate or reduce single-use plastic shopping bags. Nearly 7 in 10, 70% of residents already live in a place with a plastic bag ban. So putting in place a uniform, clear, statewide policy for single-use plastic shopping bags, as this bill does, makes perfect sense. In addition to all the benefits from reducing plastic waste, this policy will also be easier and simpler for retailers, both large and small, across the Commonwealth. Concluding, I would like to also express my appreciation and deep gratitude to a number of individuals and organizations who've made this comprehensive legislation possible today. Again, my thanks and congratulations to the Senator from Needham. Thank you for your tremendous work, you and your team, on bringing this legislation forward. I'd like to thank the Senator from Acton, Senator Eldridge, who for years has been filing legislation to eliminate single-use plastic bags. In fact, he reminded me the Senate has twice before adopted a version of this policy. So thank you, Senator, for your persistence and work for many years on this issue. I also want to thank our majority leader, Senator Cream, for her support on plastics reduction. And I also want to thank her in advance for the amendment she will be offering later today during the debate to finally update our bottle redemption law, the so-called bottle bill, which is another critical strategy in our fight to reduce and eliminate single-use plastics. So we'll be talking more about that later today. Thank you to the Senate President. I recall when the Senate President came back from a trip she took to the West Coast, and she had a chance to visit the aquarium in Vancouver. Definitely on my bucket list to get there. I understand it's an amazing aquarium. And she told us how much of an impact it had on her to see this turtle, a beautiful turtle, that had died. And when the turtle was opened up to see what had caused its death, its stomach was stuffed full of plastic bags. The turtle had been eating these plastic bags, and that eventually led to its death. Why would a turtle eat plastic bags, you may ask? It's because they look like jellyfish, and that's what this turtle would ordinarily be feeding on. But all those plastic bags floating around in the ocean that look like jellyfish, turtle had consumed and had died. And ever since then, Senate President, again, has been a champion for taking action to reduce not just single-use plastic bags, but a whole range of single-use plastics in our Commonwealth and make Massachusetts a national leader. I also want to give a shout out and thank Representative Michelle Socolo. Representative Socolo and I came together a number of years ago to found the Zero Waste Caucus in the legislature. We have almost 60 of our colleagues, representatives and senators, many in the chamber, who have been active members of that caucus. I'm so grateful for your support and your work. And that caucus has been working to study all of the relevant policies, educate ourselves and our colleagues, and advocate both through legislation and through the annual budget to reduce solid waste. And the three key policies that the caucus has been advocating for are to reduce and eliminate single-use plastics, exactly what this bill aims to do. Second is to update the state's bottle redemption law, the bottle bill, which again, I'm very pleased we'll be taking that up and debating it and hopefully adopting that policy later today. And then the third top priority is to implement extended producer responsibility in the Commonwealth. Because what we need to do is not put all of the burden of disposing of and paying for and bearing the environmental and health harms of single-use plastics and other waste, putting that all on consumers and municipalities and retailers. We need to put more of that responsibility back on the producers, the companies that are actually making these products. They need to take more responsibility. A number of other states have taken action, and I'm very pleased that this legislation before us will get Massachusetts started going down the path of putting in place hopefully a comprehensive extended producer responsibility policy for the Commonwealth as well. So again, thank you to Representative Socolo and all the members, representatives and senators of the Zero Waste Caucus. I want to thank the advocates who have been working so hard on this issue also for many years, especially Kirsty Pecci, the Executive Director of Just Zero. Thank you, Kirsty. And all of the members of the Plastic Free Mass Coalition. This is a coalition formed last year. It has now more than 30 different statewide and community groups all come together to make the case to reduce and eliminate plastics in the Commonwealth. And I know we have many members from the Plastic Free Mass Coalition that are with us in the chamber today and watching the live stream from home. Again, I'm so appreciative to all of you for your raising your voices and your advocacy. And then finally, I just want to thank so many of my constituents who I'm sure, like you, they have contacted you to tell you about the park cleanup that they were part of, or the river or stream cleanup that they were part of, or the trash boom that was placed, in one of our streams or rivers, and when they cleaned out the trash boom, the number of trash bags full of waste, most of which is plastics, that they had to collect and dispose of. Our constituents, and not to mention all the beach cleanups, right, that we hear from our constituents about all the time, and all the plastic that washes up on our beautiful beaches. So thank you to my constituents and all of your constituents who've for years now been telling us, please, please take action to eliminate these products from our environment. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I urge our colleagues today to vote in favor of this legislation.